This leader of a more moderate Athenian political faction was tasked with making the case for clemency, and he had to speak right after Cleon's rant. Thousands of lives hung in the balance, and time was not on his side. The trireme was already on its way to Lesbos. For that matter, Diodotus was now defending the soul of Athenian democracy in the face of the vengeful anger of his opponents. Can you imagine the pressure he was under? Despite that pressure, Diodotus began slowly, his calmness a stark contrast to Cleon's rage. "I do not blame the persons who have reopened the case of the Mytilenaeans," he said, "nor do I approve the protests which we have heard against important questions being frequently debated," a dig at Cleon's scorched earth tirade. Diodotus instead built his argument around the importance of free and open debate, warning his Athenian audience how haste and passion were the two biggest obstacles to good counsel. For Diodotus, the case against a mass execution didn't rest on the guilt or innocence of the Mytilenaeans. He conceded that they had indeed revolted against Athens, but he argued only for the oligarchical ringleaders to be punished. His was an argument of expediency, of realpolitik. Killing all the Mytilenaean men would not be in the interests of the Athenians. It would be a blunder, he said, to exclude rebels in other revolting cities from the hope of repentance and an early atonement of their error. Nor, he added, was there any evidence that a mass execution would act as a deterrent to future insurrections. The cool-headed Diodotus knew his audience and what they needed to hear. He also understood the importance of rational argument, and he set the tone for it, eloquently deflecting Cleon's call for vengeance. The good citizen, argued Diodotus, ought to triumph not by frightening his opponents, but by beating them fairly in argument. And beat Cleon he did, notes one writer. The assembly voted again, and this time narrowly decided in Diodotus's favour. A second trireme with new orders was then sent off in haste to Lesbos, writes Thucydides, with wine and barley cakes provided to the oarsmen and great promises made if they arrived in time. Thankfully, their trireme pulled into port just as Paces was reading the original decree brought to him by the first ship. The massacre was prevented, with only moments to spare. Thousands of innocent lives were saved, all thanks to a single argument made back in Athens. An argument that Diodotus was able to win because he excelled at the art of debating, persuading, and public speaking. He knew not just how to craft a reasoned argument, but also how to compose himself under pressure. He knew how to reach his audience in their hearts, their minds, and the very core of their identity. He knew how to roll with his opponent's haymakers and pick the critical opening to strike back. And when he did, Diodotus knew exactly how to use Cleon's weaknesses to his advantage. He knew how to go in the underdog and come out the victor. The point of Win Every Argument is to show you all the tools and tactics that Diodotus and all the world's greatest speakers and debaters employed, so you too can win every argument, even when thousands of lives aren't riding on it. Every single person on the face of the planet, every man, woman, and child, has at some moment or another tried to win an argument. Whether it's in the comment section on Facebook, or in the marble hallways of Congress, or at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Whether they've trounced their opponent or walked away sullen, everyone might then imagine all the things they could and should have said. We've all been there. We cannot escape the human urge, need, and yes, desire to argue. But arguing itself tends to get a bad rap. It's blamed for everything from political polarization to marital breakdown. In his 1936 classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie wrote, "I have come to the conclusion that there is only one way under high heaven to get the best of an argument, and that is to avoid it. Avoid it as you would avoid rattlesnakes and earthquakes." I take issue with Carnegie's conclusion. If he was still alive, maybe we could debate it. I prefer not to avoid arguments. I seek them out, rush toward them, relish and savour them. I've been arguing my whole life, in fact. I've even made a career of it. First as an op-ed columnist and TV pundit in the UK.